Welcome back to the Wealth Without Wall Street podcast, where each week we break down topics that are going to help you hopefully get closer to financial freedom. And that is when you buy assets that produce passive income that exceeds your monthly expenses. I'm going to be one of your hosts. I'm Russ Morgan, alongside my partner, the Italian Stallion, Mr. Joey Murray. Stallion, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Russ. Excited to be here.
Yeah, we got two items to cover today. One is our September passive income report. For those of you who are new to the show, every single month for the last 5 years, we've shared exactly what we do personally and how that is working out. Sometimes good, not sometimes not. But we realize that we need to practice what we preach, right? If you can't believe that it's possible if two rednecks from Alabama can do this, you may struggle to think that you can too. Secondly, we're going to cover a headline that's out there in the news about a celebrity, someone is purporting to have lost $8.5 million using something called an index universal life policy. And we'll talk about why we believe that's important for us to talk about today. So, Stallion, first, define financial freedom and talk about why the things that we're doing each and every month with our personal passive income report is helping us get closer to that.
Yeah. So we're not the first ones to come up with this, but we definitely are the ones that subscribe to that. When your passive income exceeds your monthly expenses, you are financially free. And just imagine for a second, like if that was true for you right now, that would mean that you have full autonomy of your calendar. You have all of the time to do what you want to do because all of your bills are paid and nobody dictates to you what that means for the next day and the next day and the next day after that. Every month we share this passive income report to show you how we've done that, not through Wall Street, not through projections, but through the absolute assets that we're purchasing, the businesses that we're investing in, things of that nature. And so that's really what this is all about. Is we want to lead by example, and we want to be open and honest about what's working and what's not.
So if you're riding down the road, please don't look at this on YouTube. Go back later if you want to see the report. Within a couple of weeks, we'll actually share it on our website, Wealth Without Wall Street. Scroll down to the bottom, hit passive income report, and get to see every single month what these numbers are. But for the month of September, here in 2025, our total income was a little over $57,000. Now we did have expenses associated with that, so our net, Joey, was $44,084. How did that compare to the previous month?
Well, the last month it was a little over 35,000, so it's about a 24% increase month over month, which always a good sign.
Yeah. So when you look at our report, what stands out to you as kind of a highlight that you want to touch on and why?
Well, I think it's constantly the place that gets me excited is our land business. You know, we're consistently growing month over month in that note income. If you're not familiar with the landgeek.com, that is our operating partner in this business. And through that, they're buying pieces of land, parcels of land at 20 to 30% of what the actual retail value is. And there's a lot of reasons why, but we're able to obtain that and then turn around and sell those to the retail market. And what we're doing, I love this. I actually heard Scott Jelinek say this yesterday on one of our triple play master classes. He says the reason why we're able to sell at that retail value, which is 4 or 5 times what we bought it for, is because we're selling the financing and the land comes with it. I'll say that again. People buy the financing and they get the land with it because now all of a sudden, something that was out of range for them, out of possibility, is now available to them. They can afford $250 a month, but they couldn't afford $10,000 today. And that's really how this thing continues to grow. And, you know, last month, our net cash flow in just that one vertical was almost $25,000.
Well, I'm gonna back up or pause real quickly, because if you haven't started building a system to help you to get you even in the position to start turning active income into passive income, you need to do that. You can go to wealthwithoutwallstreet.com/PIOS. There's a training there where we show you how we got to this point, right? It wasn't magical, right? It wasn't a surprise to us when it happened. We had a predictable step-by-step process that we were following that got us to here, right? So you got to get access to cash prior to then becoming a good investor. You got to learn who you are as an investor. You have to build your own investor buy box. All of those things lead up to the ability to go buy assets like the ones that you're seeing. There's lots of different assets on here, and people will say, Russ, which one do you like the most? And I'm like, Like Joey, I like land. Why? Because it's producing the most income. It's the most steady. It's the thing that isn't going away, right? If someone quits paying, I don't have to go evict someone. I was talking to a guy today at the gym. He was saying, hey, do you have anybody that's come on the podcast and told you about a really good way to get a non-paying renter out of the rental property? And so we were talking about that. And I'm like, I love land because there is no, house. There is nothing to evict. It doesn't deal with all the same ERISA issues and Dodd-Frank Act that happens with houses and commercial buildings and other things. They just quit paying. You say, okay, thank you so much. I will resell the property and move on. It's the end of the contract. Well, that's one of them. But another one that I look at this sheet and I think, what do I love the most, right? This is our investor DNA. So this doesn't mean you should love this the most. I think, Joey, we're gifted at figuring out how to turn businesses into passive assets, right? So
That's
the
right.
land business is a true business. There's people in there working every single day. That's what they do. But we have come alongside in a partnership model, and we are not active in the business. Now, do we know how to buy and sell land? Have we done it? Yes. Are you going to be speaking at an event next week and can have that conversation of exactly everything that has to happen in order to understand the county that you're going in, the the marketing that's going to happen, how to respond whenever those leads start coming back? If they don't come back at a rate, you know what to do. If they come back at a higher rate, you know what to do. Like, all the details. If we had to run it, we could, because you have to be able to inspect what you expect. But we've turned it into a passive business. Same thing with a short-term rental business that we had. We learned, we did it. We used your condo the first home that you ever owned, we turned it into a short-term rental. And then we expanded that into a business, put in an operator who was very gifted at running businesses. They scaled it over 20 something units and turned it into a revenue stream that you and I got to be and become very passive in it. That same thing could be said with the churro business, with the digital website business, with the candle business. Lots of these things, Joey, as I look at it, I say, man, what stands out to me is that we figured out how to take businesses and turn them passive.
Yeah, I'll just give you one quick little highlight to look forward to is, man, I took John Wilker's advice on the pallet business, the pallet recycling business, and I found an operator and we're partnering together. So stay tuned over the next, 30 to 60 days. We've actually got some really good positive results in just the first 60 days. So I'm happy to share that with you next month. The second thing I'll just point, this is kind of a downer, but I've learned some lessons in it. In our Turo business, one of the cars got totaled.
Oof.
Well, this is the first time that that's happened to me. And what I found out is you really want the car to get totaled later on in the process. Because early on, I had purchased this vehicle for $8,500, had to, buy a tag, do kind of the upfront fees and stuff like that of getting it set up with my operator. And it was during the worst time of the year. January, February, March are the slowest times of the year as relates to Turo. Just not that many rentals going on. And then of course it got totaled here within the last 90 days. Mm-hmm. So it didn't have a lot of time to earn, some of these revenues. And so whenever I got the check for it to being totaled, I already had depreciated because of the amount of miles that got put on it, minus the fact that it didn't have a lot of revenue. So it ended up being just under 8,000 that I got back. Wasn't a huge loss, but it definitely wasn't a win. And so,
because how much did you pay for the car?
$8,500.
Oh, okay.
So, but I mean, factoring in other fees and stuff, it ended up being an overall loss. But my point in saying this is, I want to share with you the negatives too. It's not always rainbows and unicorns. But I'll say this: I've taken that $7,800 or whatever it was, right around 8,000, and now I've bought two other cars. I had to add some capital to it. And so right out of the gate, these cars are a little bit higher quality and they're going to be an SUV. So they're going to give us a lot higher daily average rate. So stay tuned on that. But we've got now 4 total cars in the lineup.
Well, some people love to know what it's like to, live in the life of influencers and content creators, YouTubers, whatever, So all the kids listening, you want to see, how Uncle Russ and Uncle Joey are doing with the revenue. You can look on our sheet here. You can see between the two, we brought in, what is that, $166 last month. So stacking it up like press board, right? I went to dinner with my wife last night and I spent more than $100 over that amount. So that didn't really help. So, when people think, oh, well, you guys just do this for the YouTube views. I wish, I know there are people, the Mr. Beasts of the world who are making great livings off the royalties off YouTube. And, we're definitely no authors either bringing in tons of royalties, but that's part of it. All right. I want to transition, away from the passive income report. We know that this is the thing that is definitely what we're striving for. We're trying to share this with others so that they'll be encouraged, that there's an opportunity, but there's a pathway, there's a process to get there. And I said that a second ago. Our goal is to get to where our passive income exceeds monthly expenses. We have to build a system. And part of that system, Joey, once people figure out their vision, their strategy, get on board with their spouse, they start getting their cash flows in order. They start figuring out where are all the traps for their money, and where, if I'm putting money into one account and it's not giving me access, it's not producing a passive income, it's not reducing a monthly expense, it's keeping me from financial freedom. All of this stuff is stuff that they work through with our coaches on a regular basis. Is they figure out, okay, now I got to get this over to the right side, out of the rat race into financial freedom, right? And now when I'm doing that, I've got to become a better investor. I got to learn about the investor DNA, the buy box, all this stuff we were talking about. One upgrade people make, though, along that way is they say, hey, I notice you guys use dividend paying whole life insurance and this concept of infinite banking to put your cash there before you invest. And you talk about how that's the place that all those dollars come flowing back to. I want to know the benefits. I want to know why you do that. So we talk about that. We talk about all those benefits. We talk about, the additional protections we get, asset, state, tax. We talk about the extra, little bit of return over the cash accounts that we would get. We talk about the protection from ourselves, right? Having it just sitting in a checking account, easily to be spent.
Mm-hmm.
All of those little things. And we know that we're building up a system, a process over time that just puts us into control. And, not unlike anything else, everybody always wants to reinvent the wheel, try to do it better, right? And this is where people have gone and said, you know what? I know this whole life policy that you guys talk about, they've been around for 200 years, right? They get better every single year because contractually the insurance company makes it so, where the cash value must grow to equal the death benefit in the future. But, that growth, Joey, it's not as much as I would want it to be. I'd love to have better return. If I got better return, wouldn't that allow me to buy more assets? Wouldn't that allow me to create more passive income faster? All of those things. I understand the hype. Is it just hype, or is it real when people start getting into other products like Index Universal Life?
Yeah. So Russ, good point that you're making there. It makes a logical sense, right? If something can give me a higher return and give me the same output on the back end, then why wouldn't I, right? I'd be dumb not to. It's almost like I don't want to lose money on this thing, right? But the reality is, not all things are created equal. And that's what I think you were pointing out to is come to fruition with the famous NASCAR driver, Kyle Busch, and his wife. They have filed a lawsuit because they were using an Index Universal Life based tax-free, I'm putting air quotes if you can't hear me doing that, for a tax-free retirement plan. And they allege that they have lost $8.5 million as a result. And they're claiming that it had something to do with the illustrations being misleading, showing high returns with low risk, and all that those things never materialized. And I don't remember how long they've been in this contract, Russ. The fact that they're looking back on it now and saying, wait a minute, this isn't what we signed up for. It's been long enough to where they no longer have that. What were some of the things that they pointed to in the policies, Russ, that were the underperforming issues that I think people need to understand are kind of at risk and how they compare to what we're talking about with whole life?
Yeah, well, we'll link to this article, right? Again, It hasn't been taken to court as far as I know. It hasn't been tried. I don't know what will happen here. And I think that there's a little bit on both sides, right? I think the attorneys are the only ones going to make money in this deal. That's what usually happens on both sides. The problem is, I think, the reason I want to bring this up is not to just say IUL is bad, right? I think it is a tool. There's no good or bad investments. There's only good or bad investors. And as I read through this, I don't know anything about the Bushes other than when I used to watch him as a NASCAR driver, right? Go fast, turn left. And I think he did pretty good at that.
Yeah, he
Is
did.
oftentimes people believe that others are going to be smarter than them and will just handle their money at a level higher than they would. So they just say, go do it. And that's the cautionary tale that you and I are constantly pushing back on. The reason this podcast exists was specifically to help people who wanted to become financially free get there faster, but not by having others do it, right? It's for you to understand how to do it, for you to understand what's happening so that you will be able to control the future to some degree, right? The more control you have, the more involvement you have, the less risk you put yourself in. And what I take away from this is I look through here, right? Most of the time, unfortunately, because I participated on the sales side of these back in my investment advisor days. You remember, I was a certified financial planner. I had all those securities licenses, even though IULs are not a security. They're floated out there in that realm of securities, which is really kind of an oxymoron because you use the word security, but it's the thing that actually can lose 100% of its value. So that doesn't seem very secure. But I looked through this list and it's talking about how, it was represented at this tax-free retirement plan. Well, first problem there, they use the word retirement. Is there such thing as retirement, Joey?
No. To be taken out of service is not in the, it's not in the Bible. It's not what we're after.
And then it said the defendants, which is the insurance company, and I'm assuming the agents of the insurance company, it's allegedly saying that they use misleading illustrations. Well, what would be misleading potentially about an illustration, Joey?
Well, the fact is that an IUL policy, like their illustration software, can project what those actual returns will look like within those indexes. Compare that to that's all based off of future. What?
Yeah. I want to sharpen your language there because you said what the actual returns will look like. Is that not the actual returns?
No. These are all projections based on historical numbers, right?
Yeah.
But compare that to a whole life policy. They actually do the opposite, right? They use today's dividend scale and they project that out. They don't use historical. If they did, the illustration would look way better because you start looking at 30 years ago. In the last 30 years, those dividends were actually been much higher than they are today. So we're actually doing the opposite and showing almost like an underperforming projection comparatively.
Well, I want to say, like when I say misleading illustrations, right? This is if you've ever been in any sort of sales pitch, right? On the receiving end of it, what does the pitch sound like? Does it say, here's all the ways in which you can lose your money? Or does it sound like, hey, let me show you what the potential future would look like if you were doing this thing? And that's what's happening, right? Is that misleading? I don't know. I would say that if that person, the Bushes or whoever the representatives that were, supposedly looking out for their best interest was reading the 30-something page document that those illustrations exist. And I wasn't in that meeting. So maybe they only use one page. Maybe they wrote on the pages. There's lots of actual legal issues if the person who is showing illustrations did any of those things, right? Because if you're going to show an illustration, you have to show the whole thing with all the disclosures, all the documents, all the stuff that says, here's all the ways you can lose your money, right? So I wasn't in that meeting. I don't know what was said. I just know that if you read those documents, you would not be misled by the fact you assumed it was going to work out. It would actually tell you the opposite. Like, this is just basically make-believe. You basically should not base your decision off anything on this paper. I think so, kind of what it summarizes too. But then it talks about undisclosed costs. What are some of the undisclosed costs that exist potentially in an index universal life product that the average person wouldn't know about?
Well, by the way, if you want to do a deep dive on this particular subject, We actually did a roundtable episode recently on this podcast, or on this sort of all the hidden fees and all the way that these things are actually designed and engineered. But a couple of them I'll just kind of quickly call the cost of the options that they're using to buy the index each year. That is a cost that has to be factored in. The rising cost, and when I say rising, that means it's guaranteed to rise every single year on the term insurance that you're buying, because an index universal life is based off of a chassis of a 1-year term policy with a side account. So when you do that, you're actually guaranteeing that every year you get older, you're actually going to increase the cost of insurance every single year. That is built in, that's baked in. But there's also things that are not known at the time when you buy an IUL. In other words, what is the actual amount? They call it the net at risk. So if you have $1 million policy, death benefit, and you have $200,000 worth of actual cash value, the net at risk is $800,000. Well, let's fast forward and say that over the course of 3 years, you have not gotten any gains because the index has not gone up. It may have even gone down. But now those costs have eaten into that cash value, which goes from 200,000 down to, let's just say, 180. Well, now the net at risk 3 years later is no longer 800,000. It's now 820,000, or it can go up or down from there. Well, now the term cost to cover that difference has gone up because you're 3 years older, and the amount has increased. So those are things that are not going to be just super clearly outlined in any illustration that, and again, I'm kind of making some assumptions of what the Bushes are talking about, but that's a cost that you don't want to see 10, 20 years, 30 years into this deal.
When you're putting money away for safety purposes, you don't want to bet on maybe. And I think, unfortunately, that's what happens in things like this. These are based on maybes. Maybe it works out. Maybe it doesn't. We want to create certainty. How many people come to us every single week, every single month with the goal of leaving the company that they're in? I was talking to a dad the other day, and his whole goal is to get out of his job, even though he's making really, really good money, $400,000 a year, so he can spend time with his 3 kids because his wife is deceased. His whole goal is, how do I get out of this job? The job that's provided for our whole family. But right now, it's the thing that separated me from my kids who need a parent with them as much as possible. Well, he has to create certainty in his life. The more things that he creates uncertainty in, he creates more disruption, more volatility in a family that doesn't need it. So when you start looking at where you're going to put your safe dollars, put it on rock, not on sand. This is what I would say is problematic when people start looking at this. It's not, I like to ask the question that most people will ask us is, can I or will IULs work for infinite banking? And I say that's a bad question. The better question is, what can go wrong? Right? What can go right with your investing is we should be focused on. And I'll point this out. I know we need to wrap up here, but I see here that it says that they paid more than $10.4 million in premiums. By the way, I think that that's something you and I are approaching if we're not already there in our own contracts. Mm-hmm. But it's saying that they have experienced net out-of-pocket losses of over $8.5 million. That's crazy town, right?
That is crazy.
When you're building assets in cash value in dividend-paying whole life insurance contracts designed the correct way, like our team, almost every one of them were clients. Like, they know what it's like to be on the receiving end. So when they have decided to leave their jobs and now to work, including you, Joey, to help other people get closer to what they receive, they know how to do it because it's what they did. And I can guarantee you every single one of the ones that they are doing would not be in this situation. They wouldn't have someone who put in $10 million and only have $1.5 million in cash values, right? They may have $8.5 million in loans outstanding, right? But they would not be in a situation where only a fraction of the money is in there, because that's not the way infinite banking was designed. That's not the way Nelson and Nash taught you and I for 10 years when you and I got to spend time with him. The author And the founder of the Becoming Your Own Banker concept lived right here in Birmingham. We got a chance to spend 10 years with him prior to him dying. We learned that that's not what it looks like. So just some takeaways here is that, one, you have to be responsible for yourself in this. Like, nobody's going to do it for you. So if you're just hoping that someone else is going to be looking out for your best interest, then you potentially will be discouraged and disappointed that those expectations aren't met. Also,
right.
as you look at where can I put money, I need to find safeties. I need to find guarantees. Then, and only then, can you then start looking, how do I become a good investor, Joey? How do I start building passive income that exceeds my monthly expenses? Final thought as we wrap up here, man.
Yeah, I'd say certainty beats potential every time. The other thing is just what you said. I want to kind of go a little bit deeper on that. When you are trying to make savings and investing in one place, you're going to get neither. Okay, that's the takeaway for me from this. You need to have savings be savings, and then you need to be an investor that invests those savings. That's how this is really designed to work. And that's why they're the two steps that are keeping you from financial freedom right now. And we can help you with both of them, right? Set up your passive income operating system. Go to wealth.wallstreet.com/PIOS. And then two, become an investor. We have a 12-week course. Go to choosepassiveincome.com that at the end of those 12 weeks, as long as you qualify, you will be guaranteed to make your first $500 a month in passive income. And if you can make the first $500, that means you can make the next $500 and the next, and you can stack it to get to where your passive income exceeds your monthly expenses. No longer are you dependent on Wall Street. No longer are you dependent on someone's IUL product to be the investor for you. You have done it yourself, and that is the way it's designed to be.
All right, tribe, you have another chance to share this episode with someone who needs it, because this is the way that we all level up, right? We need to be surrounded by people doing the same thing. Otherwise, we'll be that solo person out there, and human behavior may take over, and we may end up falling short. So get as many people around you who want to become financially free as possible. If you're not already in a tribe that has that, you can go to wealth.wallstreet.com/community and join over 10,000 other people that are on their path to becoming financially free so you can level up too. Have an amazing day.